All right, if you have low back problems, if you have hip problems, if you have pelvis problems, we are going to run you guys through a quick express little 10-minute routine that is super effective that you can easily integrate into your day. Everybody has 10 minutes a day. We're going to keep this in and around 10 minutes for you so that you can get the most bang for your buck and the most return on investment for those areas in 10 minutes. Now, I want you to keep in mind as well, if you hear me say, do I have pelvis problems? And you go, no, no, no. If you have low back problems, your pelvis is the bottom of your lumbar spine. They are intimately related. And so again, they tend to run hand in hand. So even though you hear pelvis, I want you to just think lower spine. We're gonna get right into it today. We're gonna start with a lumbar spine and kind of pelvis focused exercise. So I want you to join me on your hands and knees here. Now what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take our lower spine and our pelvis and we're gonna move it in a bunch of different directions. So just follow along with me here, and I want you to just be mindful of what your chest is doing. If you imagine a laser coming out of your chest bone, I want that laser to stay pointed right at the floor. I don't want you to crank it up, and I don't want you to crank it down at your knees. We're trying not to use our thoracic spine here. I'm gonna give you an entirely different video specifically for your thoracic spine so that you have something to do for that area as well. But today we're gonna try and stay really still through there, and I want you to focus on trying to isolate your low back as best you can. So coming onto our hands and knees here, we're going to try to keep that chest bone still. I want you to think about your tailbone, and I want you to try and drop your tailbone underneath you such that your low back rounds up towards the ceiling, okay? Again, not moving your chest bone if you can help it. Now, while that tailbone's fully tucked, I want you to try and pull your right hip towards your lower ribs. Not your ribs towards your hip, but your hip towards your ribs. So if you watch me, here's my hip bone. It's gonna come up towards my ribs, and now I've kind of side crunched on this side, but I've only used my pelvis and lumbar spine to get there. Now I'm gonna stay side crunched on this right side, and I'm actually gonna start to tip my tailbone the other way, going into lumbar extension, staying side crunch on that side. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take it the other way. So I'm gonna stay in extension, I'm gonna stay dipped this way, but now I'm gonna side crunch over to the left side, and you're gonna notice my right side is now opening up and gapping. So now I'm closed off on that left side, opened up on this right side, and now I'm gonna take my tailbone and I'm gonna reorient it back into posterior tilt or lumbar flexion. So now my low back is now rounded up towards the ceiling, again, trying not to move my chest. Now we're gonna go back over to the right side. So we side crunch on the right side. Careful when you do this, if you watch me for just a second here, I don't want you leaning like this from side to side. You're just trying to crunch on that side. Then we're gonna stay crunched on the right. We're gonna go back down into lumbar extension. So now my tailbone's tipped this way, my spine is dipped this way. I'm gonna stay dipped low. We're gonna go all the way over to the left-hand side. Okay, and then we're gonna stay crunched on the left. We're gonna take that tailbone, we're gonna tuck it back underneath us, roll that tailbone under you, and then we're gonna come all the way over to the right side. Okay, so we're gonna do one more in this direction. Stay side crunched on the right here, tailbone stays tucked, low back stays rounded, and then we're gonna dip our way into spine extension, one vertebrae at a time if you can help it. Trying to dip as low as you can without your chest moving at all. And then we're gonna go all the way to the left. Okay, so we're crunching on the left side, we're opening up this right side, and then we're gonna take that tailbone, we're gonna tuck it underneath us again. We're gonna try and lengthen out all the skin and all the tissue on our lumbar spine or on this back side as best we can. I'm gonna open up that whole area up. You're gonna be able to see both pairs of pants that I'm wearing right now because it's minus 50 here in Saskatchewan today. We're gonna switch over to the right side. That's Celsius for you American people. And we're gonna come back down, staying crunched on the right side. Now we're just gonna throw it in reverse here, okay? So you're crunched on the right side. We're in extension. We're gonna drop that tailbone back. We're now gonna crunch over to the left side, but staying in flexion. And then we're gonna dip our hips back down. We're gonna go a little faster. Now I'm gonna assume you guys are starting to get the hang of it. So I'm dipped into extension. I'm now starting to crunch over to this right side. And then we're gonna drop that tailbone down. We're gonna start to lengthen the low back, lengthen all that skin, all that tissue on the back side as much as we can. And then you're gonna drift over to the left, crunching on the left side, but again, your chest is staying still, right? And dripping your way back down into extension, finding every fitness influencer's favorite pose, and then go all the way over to the right side if you're a fitness influencer. I apologize. Or I don't know. I'm gonna go back into lumbar flexion. You know what I mean when I say that, right? So you immediately know what position I'm referring to. When I say flexion, which is what I'm in right now we're crunched on the left, now we're going into extension. Most people don't know what the heck I'm talking about, but if I say, give me the fitness influencer pose, everybody immediately knows that's extension. Coming over to the right side and dropping that tailbone down. Now we're gonna do one more lap here, okay? So we're going into flexion. We're keeping that tailbone tucked. We're crunching over to the left side, and then we're drifting down into extension or your influencer pose, getting as far as you can, and then going back to the right. Very good. Okay, so now we've taken our lumbar spine through as much range as we can. We've started to get that tailbone in our pelvis moving. This next one, I'm gonna ask you to get your hips involved here. So we're gonna be moving our pelvis again, but we're gonna use a lot of hip and glute musculature to make that happen. So what that's gonna look like, I again want you to join me on all fours, but we're gonna do something a little bit different this time. So we're on all fours. I'm gonna straighten out my right leg. You can do whichever leg you'd want, just make sure you do both. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm now gonna imagine two lasers, one coming out of my chest pointed at the ground, one coming out of my pelvis pointed at the ground. So kind of where my strings are hanging on my first pair of pants here. It's pointed right at the ground right now. If I imagine that this string is a laser, I'm gonna try and point that laser towards you, okay? But in doing so, I'm gonna try and keep my chest pointed towards the ground as best I can so as not to lead with my chest. What I'm really doing here, to give you a view from the other side, is I'm using all of this musculature on the outside of my hip to rotate my pelvis over towards the left. And then we're gonna go the other way, and I'm gonna try and point that laser towards the right to sink into a big stretch in this hip on that side, okay? So let's do it together, and maybe I'll show you the right leg first, because then you can actually see. So we're gonna do 5 of these nice and slow. Okay, so straighten out that left leg. We're even gonna take that foot right off the ground so it doesn't help us, and we use all this meat to do it. You're gonna shorten everything on the right side to try and turn your pelvis and get your pelvis pointed towards the opposite side of the room. I'm trying to show you as much of my low back as I can right now, squeezing all this side hip stuff. Then we're gonna go the opposite way. I'm gonna try and make as much of my low back disappear as I can, and I'm gonna try and point my pelvis over towards your side of the room now. And then I should feel a big stretch in that outer hip. Now I'm gonna use that tissue that's lengthening right now to shorten that stuff, to pull my tailbone up and around. So now my tailbone's pointed to the left, or my pelvis is pointed to the left. And I'm gonna sink into that hip, rotate my pelvis and lower spine to the right, and then we're gonna go right back up again. This exercise starts burning really quickly. All the way up. All the way back down for a third rep here. We've only got 2 more, stay with me. Squeeze that lateral hip stuff, turn that pelvis, whoopsies, over to the left, and then sink into it. Turn everything over to the right. One more, open up to the left side, and close it off, sink into that hip. Now we're gonna do the same thing on the left side here. I know this kind of looks like fire hydrants, but fire hydrants like this is a hip drill, okay? So it's just my hip abducting here on my non-stance leg or my free leg. On this drill, I'm using my leg that's on the ground, and I am still abducting, but I'm really trying to turn my pelvis over to you, keeping my chest pointed at the ground. And I'm not just coming down to neutral, I'm going past neutral and trying to point my pelvis to the left to get into a big stretch in my left hip. And then we're gonna open back up again for 2. Trying to get my belly button pointed towards you, and then trying to get my belly button pointed away from you, sinking into that stretch. Same thing, turning it towards you, and turning it away from you. 2 more here, rotating over to the right, squeeze that left hip stuff, swing it on over to the left, stretch out that lateral hip. 1 more here, open it up, and close it down. Very good, okay. Last exercise here, we're gonna take our ball, and this is where this thing comes in handy now. We're gonna come up into standing. You're gonna need a door frame, a pole, something sturdy. I don't want anybody falling, that you can grab onto, okay? So if you have a door and you can grab onto the two handles, or you have a door frame where you can actually latch onto the door frame, that works great. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna sink back into it. Now, if you don't have anything you can hang on to, you can do it without, and you'll just sit back into this position here. So I'm gonna fold at my hips, get my bum back, and then I'm gonna do the exact same exercise here. For a lot of people though, I find it helpful to give them something they can hang on to a little bit so that they're still in what we'd call a hip hinge position. So you fold at the hips, send your butt back behind you, but you're gonna hang on to something and kind of just let your chest fall back, just like this here, okay? So our weight's kind of biased towards our heels now. We're gonna squeeze that ball just enough that you feel your inner groin, and then what you're gonna do is you're gonna pull one knee back and drive the other knee forward, and then you're gonna go the other way. Now, to give you a view from the front of what you're really doing there, is sitting in that position. When I pull my right knee back and drive my left forward, it turns my pelvis to the right. Then, ouch, when I go the other way, it turns my pelvis to the left, and it shifts my weight over to my left leg. So I'm doing a slight weight shift over to the right leg when I pull back on the right, pelvis rotation to the right, and then I do the exact same thing going to the left. So I'm actually mobilizing my pelvis, but I'm using my inner thigh and my hip stuff, my hip tissue to get me there, okay? So that's what we're doing here. Let's do a few each way. So we're hanging back into it. We're putting pressure on that ball. We're pulling the right knee back. If you do a really good job of this, you're gonna feel your right inner thigh right up by your pelvis and pelvic floor. Then we're gonna go the other way. Pull your left knee back, right knee goes forward, pelvis turns to the left. Back to the right, pull that right knee back. You're gonna notice your weight naturally shifting over to your right heel, and then you're gonna take it back over to that left side. Now, careful you don't slip into fitness influencer pose. That's not the goal here. We actually wanna stay biased towards flexion as we go through this, and you're gonna feel your inner thigh muscles a lot more when you do so. If your tendency is to slip into extension, you'll notice it, and you should probably practice being able to stabilize and move your lumbo-pelvic-hip complex, or your low back, pelvis, and hips, without relying on lumbar extension. So this would be a good drill for you. So we're gonna stay biased in flexion. We're gonna shift our weight to the left, pull the left knee back, pull the right knee back, shift our weight to the right. Give me one more each way. Back over to the left, nice and smooth. Back over to the right, nice and smooth. Now, when you get really good at that, which you don't have to be good at it right away, but when you do get really good at it, what you're gonna notice is it feels like you're passing work from your right groin to your left groin, to your right groin, to your left groin. I hope that was helpful, you guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video.